Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Bizarre and the Unknown. You guys wanted it. You guys got it. We have a panel together, do a Q&A on Dogman and Bigfoot today. We have Robby Rip Rains in the house, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. D.A. Roberts, and my brother from another mother, William, the one and only Nighthawk. And then we have the cryptid huntress herself, Jessica Jones. So, guys, I want to start out here. I want to let you guys kind of tell, for people who ain't familiar with you guys, I'm going to have you start off one by one, kind of talk a little bit about yourselves, and we'll get into the meat and taters of this show. I guess we'll start with Robby and work our way. Ladies first? I like it. Ladies first.
Yep. Oh, me? Okay, I guess that means me. Okay. Well, I'm Jessica Jones, aka the Cryptid Huntress. I am a longtime Bigfoot and cryptid field researcher based out of Georgia. I actually just noticed that I'm really sunburned, okay, because I just got home just about an hour ago from the East Tennessee Squatch Out. I was out there doing some Bigfooting and hanging out with some of the best in the Bigfooting community out there in East Tennessee with Manimal Research, and I can name everybody, but it'd take up the whole show. Okay, so, but it was a lot of fun. I do a lot of cryptid field research. I'm a member of like four different teams now. We do not only Bigfoot investigations and research, but now I've gotten into the Dogman investigations. So, and Skinwalker caves. Excuse me, I'm not going to say that word anymore. I promise. But I'm pretty active right now in all my investigations and things that I'm doing. So, thanks for having me today. Join the panel.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I guess age before beauty. William, you want to do next?
No, he's older than I am.
Prettier too.
I'm William Nighthawk. I am a Lakota and Cherokee Shawnee mixed blood. Grew up traditional native as much as I could. I'm also a Chashawakan, a holy man for my people, and was brought up by a black witch who was my mother and taught me all the dark arts of the Native American aspect of things. And then my father got me out of that and into the traditional ceremonies and stuff of our people. I have grown up in a haunted house my whole life until I moved out when I was an adult, and around paranormally charged property, and cryptids were everywhere. I picked grapes, wild grapes, and berries next to the forest people, Big Brother. Never had a problem with them except one time growing up, and that's pretty much it. And you'll hear about all that later on.
Sweet. DA, you want to go next?
D.A. Roberts. I host a show called DA Ex Machina. It's on Wednesdays and Saturday nights. Robby's one of my co-hosts. I'm also a best-selling author. I write a lot of cryptid fiction and mostly horror. I've got 32 books currently in print. You can find them all at daroberts.net. And I've been investigating cryptids since about 1978.
Cool. Get this to pop up. Robby, you want to go ahead and knock her out of the park?
I'm Robby Rains, and I'm, like DA said, I'm his co-host every Wednesday and Saturday night on DA Ex Machina. I also have What's Really Out There with myself and Johnny, which is, as we like to joke around, saying DA Ex Machina Light, as we usually go about 2.5 hours on DA Ex Machina. What's Really Out There is usually about 30 minutes to an hour, just a little snippet of stuff. I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for going on close to 30 years. So yes, I'm old. And kind of like DA, I've been involved in cryptids since really early age in life, probably about the early 80s. I've done research with Jessica and with DA, and it's just a passion.
Heck yeah. And for me, I'm author. Always tell everybody I'm an aspiring researcher. E.D. Testerman. host of the Bizarre and the Unknown. I write books. Well, I'm not a famous as DA is. DA is my mentor, and thanks to him is the reason why I got back into writing. So I love doing it. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, especially up there. I'm getting a little long in the tooth. Can't go out and party like I used to. Not sure I want to anymore either, but it's fun, man. I'll enjoy this. Each one of these on our panel today are really good researchers, really good investigators. Each bring a different degree to this discussion, and this is why I'm excited about it. And I wanted to do this, and it was brought up in the chat. You guys wanted this as well. So we're getting her done today. So this is for you guys. This is your time to pick our brains and see our different point of views on each board. Stopa. Sorry, Boar's being ornery. Hey, Larry. So this is your chance to pick our brains and get our different points of view. One things I want to start out with, and this is something that William and Robby have a big understanding to. And come on, daggone thing. And we'll start off on this. Now, you guys said this is very familiar to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I'll whichever one wants to speak
Go ahead,
first.
William. You got more knowledge on it than I do, William. So you go ahead first.
This is one of the types of the forest people that my father and my uncles told me about growing up as a child, and most of my encounters were involved with this type of a being. And I say being because they're so much almost similar to us, with the way we do things and stuff, but they're more secluded and family oriented than we are, to tell you the truth. But this is exactly what I was telling everybody in the back room today about what I had encountered when I was a child. I was 12 years old on a dirt bike and riding around the fields and stuff around where we lived and in the woods. And basically, the first time I had a physical encounter with it was I was riding dirt bikes with a couple other guys, and we were 12, 13-year-old, kids getting around in the woods and in the fields. And the first time I ever saw this thing up close, it looked exactly like that in the face. It wasn't as muscular as what, I expected. It was more lengthy and lanky, which after now, looking back at that, I kind of figured it might have been a young juvenile or a young adult, because it was messing with a small one in a tree. A second time I got a close look at it, it was about a week later. We were riding dirt bikes again in the wooded area, and this branch came flying across the path that I was riding my dirt bike on, and it hit the spokes of my front wheel, and I ended up dumping the dirt bike onto me and burnt my leg on the exhaust. As I went to go push the bike off of me, I looked up and to my right a little bit, and there was, well, the only way I can describe it is just to show you. There was this standing there. Okay. Muscles and everything. This is probably 99% accurate on what I encountered that second time. The size of it was every bit of 9 foot, if not 10 foot tall. But it had purposely thrown a branch at my front tire on the dirt bike to stop me from, apparently, because dirt bikes are loud, they crackle and stuff because they're 2 cylinders, 2 strokes. Apparently they were in the middle of a hunt, and I kind of ticked it off, and that's how they got me to get out of the area. And as soon as I saw it, it was grinning at me, and I got a good look at his face, which looked exactly like that picture, exactly to a T. Even the skin tone color was exact, the conical shape of the head and everything. And I ended up getting out of there after I saw it grinning at me and noticed a deer standing close by too, like it was frozen. And that was my second encounter. And everything led on from that my whole life.
Robbie, if you want to, you can share your
Well, mine
experience
wasn't
with that one.
as harrowing as Williams, but that side view, turn it facing you, and that's what I had. And I think I've told my story on Jessica's show. I know I've told it plenty of times on DA's show, and I think I even told it on Williams' show when I was on his show. Back in the early 80s, about 82, 81, 82, somewhere around in there, at my great-grandfather's house, which is just about 200 yards that way. Late summer night, probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock, maybe on into 9:30, somewhere around in there. It's already dark, so I stood up, turned the TV off, and for whatever reason, I just decided to look to the right. Don't know why, because that's not the way that I would have been going to go out on the front porch where my mother and grandparents and two great-grandparents were out talking. You know, back then, people used to sit out on the porch on summer nights and just talk. Had them old yellow light bulbs. What Doc call them? The gopher lights.
Yeah.
So I stood up, turned the TV off, and this was an old farmhouse, so it's, you know, no upstairs, downstairs, all single floor plan, open design. I'm in the living room area. Kitchen's right beside me, and then a little mud room out to the side of that, which is where you came in and out of the back door. And then back then they didn't have bulldozers that came in and leveled everything out. You set your house down, and whatever was level or unlevel, you used cement block to level it off.
Mm-hmm.
So that side of the house was probably about 5.5 to 6 foot difference in height from the other. So they had to have that many blocks stacked up on it. And then just them old concrete steps that they used to sell it wherever they bought them back then. And I think it was like 5 or 6 steps high. And then that old storm door on the back. So as I look out, I'm looking at that storm door. And when I see the storm door, I look up at the top of the storm door and I see a face, the face that you just put up, but turned towards me, looking in at me. And like I said, its chest was the bar in the middle of the storm door was in the middle of its chest, and it was looking down like this. So the top of its head would, if it stood straight up, it would have been above that top of the door. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, and like I said, this is, you know, when you have I don't want to say traumatic, because it may have been traumatic, but when you have something like that, you're about to be in a wreck, everything just kind of slows down. It feels like it's taking, you know, minutes when it's only taking in reality seconds. And I'm sitting there looking at them in my mind. I'm trying to think, what am I looking at? And it's doing this the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, that's not a reflection because I'm standing still. So when it started moving, I'm like, and I, you know, just kind of, but it was going opposite directions. It's like if I would move this way, it'd go the opposite way. So there again, wasn't a reflection. And then all of a sudden, it just, you know, that wave of terror, realization, whatever, and just the term monster came through my head. You know, 8-year-old kid, that happened. I just, you know, the hair stood up on every part of my body, and I just went straight out the front door. Got to my mom, and I'm like, call dad, call dad, call dad. My dad was a deputy sheriff at the time for the county we live in, and he was on second shift. So back then, there's no cell phones, there's no pagers, there's none of that. To get him, you had to call dispatch. Dispatch had to call him on the radio. He had to drive somewhere where there's a phone or drive here. So he had, you know, drive to a phone, call, hey, what's going on? Long story short, can't get dad here, get my uncle. My uncle's 6'5" at the time, probably 325-ish, somewhere around there. He was a football player. And in my eyes, nobody could mess with my stepdad, who was a cop, or my uncle, who was big. So my uncle comes down there and he goes out on the back porch and he stands up, and, you know, the bar, you know, like I said, he's 6'5", and the bar in the middle of the door is like right up to here. He's like, see, you just saw a reflection. I'm like, no, I didn't, because that thing's head was about 2 feet above where your head's at. It was, like I said, it was during summer, hadn't been a lot of rain, and that whole area out there was really hard packed. So I was never told, and of course I didn't go out there and look, but I was never told if they found any tracks. It was like, no, well, there's nothing out there. DA and I have talked about this several times, and we feel like there was some stuff, and I was just never told, so because they didn't want me panicking and not ever wanting to go outside again or whatever. But the funny thing about it is my great grandparents never tried to tell me that I didn't see what I saw. My grandparents and my parents did, but my great grandparents never said, "Oh, you didn't see anything." Because I can remember my great grandmother telling me, "Don't you go too far out in the woods, and boogers will get you." Just matter of factly. So, like I said, me and DA have had that conversation many times, and we both feel like they probably believed me. They just weren't going to say it to them.
There was also the fact that they wouldn't keep the cattle in the lower field.
Yep. Every night at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, my grandfather would send, or my great grandfather would send his dog Ben down in the lower pasture to bring the cows back up in the upper pasture. Now there was a time after that they all went down into the swamp area back behind the back pasture because there was a bear sighting supposedly, and they supposedly found some places where bears cracked. But obviously they wouldn't take me because I was only 8 years old, so they're not going to take me at that time. But it was, and now that we have the internet, if you look on that big website that shall remain nameless, that we all know who we're talking about, during the exact same time that I had my sighting, there is they say it was a Class B is how they rated it, DA? Class B sighting, which is about 3 to 4 miles from where I had my sighting, about 3 to 4 miles away. There is one actually documented on their website now. So,
man, well, that's cool. So, guys, tonight, if you would not mind, if you got a question for anybody in the panel or for all of us in the panel, please put your questions in all caps. That way, it's easier for me to catch it. I'm the only one that's able to run this right now, as far as I know, because I don't think Roxanne, my moderator, can pop up highlights. So, help me out a little bit by, if you got questions for anybody in the panel, please put everything in caps. So, I'll give you a second. You guys go ahead and start asking your questions now. We've got this stuff done. Unless anybody else, Jessica or DA, have you guys ever had an experience with one similar to that one there as well?
Go ahead, Jessica.
Me personally, not that looks just like that. No, but I was thinking about something that I wanted to mention tonight, because when I was at the Squatch Out in East Tennessee over the weekend, an interesting topic of conversation was the dead silence that happens whenever a Bigfoot is in the environment. And I just wanted to note that because Robby's here. Robby and I are together on a screen right now. And both times that Robby and I have gone out, we've experienced that exact same thing. And I actually talked about that at the Squatch Out this weekend, about how we had walked up to a field that is one of my research areas, well known for Bigfoot and other like UFO and weird stuff, UFOs and whatever goes on up there. But each time that we went, Robby and I both, when we got up there, I think it was the last time or the first time we were there were the crickets and all the bugs were like super loud and we were screaming over each other.
That was the first
time. And then
time.
it just went silent. That
was the second
first time
we got out and there was nothing as soon as we got out of the vehicle. The first time it was like being at a concert when we got out there and we were, hey, because we were this far apart because we could not hear each other. And just like that, everything just stopped.
Yeah. And then we were still screaming at each other after it stopped, and it was so weird. Yeah, it was really strange feeling. It
was exactly like one of those movie scenes where you see people talking, and all of a sudden the music just stops, and they're still like that is 100% what happened. And we both looked at each other like, "What the hell just happened?" And we're looking around, and then I can't remember if I just heard something or if I just had a feeling that there was something over your shoulder, because I'm looking at Jessica and I said, there is something behind you. And she's looking at me, she goes, there's something behind you too. And then all of a sudden we both turned and looked down to her vehicle and she said, there's something down there too. So we felt like, whatever it was, which we both feel like it was probably Bigfoot's, big feet, however you want to pluralize it. And she's like, maybe we ought to get back down to the car just so we don't get cut off. I said, you know what? I think that's a pretty good idea. So, but we ended up staying a few more minutes after that, and as we come back down the hill, I'm looking at Jessica, and she's kind of walking back down to the hill where we were just standing was up behind her, and I see a big shadow start moving across, and it looked like it was exactly where we were at. And I said, "Turn around, turn around, turn around." And she turned. Now you did get to see, just as it was walking off, you did get to see it, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it was a little unnerving, a little bit. I mean, it's not really scary. I mean, we lived. Okay, but did you die? No. Okay, we were good, and it was actually a pretty cool experience because I had not. I mean, I've experienced that before where the environment did go silent, but that was extreme. That was an extreme case that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the second
we've got our first question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the second one was
we got
might have been the first one, but the second one was scary.
Yeah, second one was a little scary.
I remember you guys telling that story, man. Heck yeah. We actually got our first question for the night, and this comes from Woo. So we were asked, and this is probably going to be more affected towards DA and Robby, is how does law enforcement usually handle phenomenal incidences for the panel?
Yeah, every department I've ever worked on, there's never been a policy in place for dealing with Bigfoot or supernatural. The only time something like that would come into play is if it got bumped up the food chain and state or federal got involved, because most little departments they don't deal with something like this enough to have any kind of policy in place. But I know my last chief, Joe Mahan, at my old department, if something weird like that happened, he wanted to know, not because he was trying to cover it up, because he wanted to get out there and see it too.
Yeah, and my old chief's in the chat right now, Rodney, and he can tell you that we've never had an official policy for any of that kind of stuff. But I mean, we've went out and answered, it used to be the old prowler call, which, whatever our 10 code was for that. So who knows if those prowlers were actually people or other things, because a lot of times by the time you get there, whatever it is or whoever it was is already gone. I don't think in 30 years I've ever actually caught that prowler. He's really good. He always gets away before we get there. So, I think DA's right. I think unless it got bumped up to the federal level, I don't think any small agencies ever really even. It's more like if something like that does happen, the federal agencies are going to come in and take over anyway.
What's that?
I know you wouldn't, Rod, but we never.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can't answer for law enforcement. I can't answer for law enforcement because my time was in the military. I was never law enforcement. Now, little Linda. So, in the military, if we was on watch, man, and something weird happened that technically can't be reported, we didn't write it down or say nothing. Especially considering a lot of times we had clearances, secret clearances, top secret clearances, stuff like that. So anytime that you have something weird like that happen, you don't report it because they'll yank your security clearance quicker than a hot knife through butter. You just do not report anything weird like that you see. I've seen some weird stuff all over this world. And
as a cop, if you report it, you stand a good chance of pissing in a cup the next day.
Yeah.
Or go for psychological.
We got another. Yeah.
Yeah, we
have another
psychologist.
Actually, I just thought about Jessica, you worked for the government level. Was it kind of the same for you guys? I know yours was different than ours, but was it kind of the same for you on your end?
Well, I never went public for 10 years because I did work for the state of Georgia, and I held an executive position. I was head of an agency. And so, no, people just knew that I was going camping. Okay. When I would do my Bigfoot stuff, didn't really talk about it very much. I didn't discuss my Bigfooting stuff with people I work with. Now it is okay. So I have had park rangers here in Georgia contact me because one guy was kind of in a panic because he had 9 Bigfoot sightings at his park. this was just before the Georgia Guidestones got blown up. Okay, I was there about a month or two before that, investigating his park. And he was actually upset because he was having to take these reports and nobody was taking it seriously. And he was actually having to write up these reports and send them all to the governor's office. Okay, so for whatever that means, I don't know. I mean, you can use that information how you will, but he was having to report these sightings to the higher ups. So,
yeah. Well, I got a cousin that works for a railroad, and he says if anything like that pops across the deal, they have little buttons on their deal. They just put, for whatever it is. He wouldn't tell me what it was for that. He just said, "Yeah, we got weird." That's all he would say. But they have just got, like, if you hit a car, you hit a person or whatever, they have a button, and it automatically sends to their main office to let them know that, hey, this happened at this spot. It bings the GPS and everything like that. I've been trying to get him to talk a few times, but I get it. I mean, that's one hell of a retirement you don't want to lose. We actually have another question here, and this is from Jeff. Jeff wants to know, what's the weirdest mimic you have heard? And tell you what, William, I'll let you start on this one first.
I think the weirdest mimicking that I've heard when it comes to being out on the ground, boots on the ground, is the sound of metallic noises. We experienced it, and it was sounding like somebody took a baseball bat and smacked the side of an oil drum. That's how loud it was. That's probably the most disturbing sound I think I've heard out in the middle of nowhere, when you're not going to have metal drums laying around.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing I've heard in the woods that creeped me out the most was what sounded like a baby crying. And that was deep in the Mark Twain National Forest.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's probably when we were at the LBL and Johnny did those three sets of owl calls, and the first two were like perfect mimics. And then the third time he did it, you get back, ooh, 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 like it was pissed off, and then 3 knocks right after that. So we were all like,
and Johnny purposely did an owl call that was not indigenous to that area. It was an East Coast owl.
Interesting.
I've had 2 experiences. One of them that is Bigfoot related. I was up in the North Georgia mountains with some of my team, and we started hearing something that sounded like a cow mooing, but it was on top of a mountain, and there are no cows there anywhere near. And it was mooing, and it was making this weird noise, and it sounded like a cow until the end. It was like moo, 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 and it started making this weird noise, and it started laughing. So it was almost like the Bigfoot was trying to mess with us and make us think it was a cow, but then it knew that we knew it wasn't a cow. And so I've heard that. And then another mimic would be when I was hiking into the meadow, a place that my team researches, and I heard a woman's voice scream from across the lake. She goes, "Time travel," really loud. And it was like a couple of weeks later to like a month later, I realized that was my voice. So it was me. So that was interesting. That was the coolest mimic, I guess.
Okay.
We heard chittering or some kind of chat that sounded like radio traffic in Combs Ferry that night, didn't we, DA?
And one night, Noah said he heard my wife's voice call him, and she was here at the house, and we were 60-some miles away.
Ooh, that's creepy.
I mean, I've got a strange one, and I've got one that the only time I've ever had true fear on my property of what things on here for me. So I'll start with the strangest one I heard. This is when I started having consistent activity on my property, and this took actually place before the scary one. But I had something shaking Dad's camper, and I thought it was my daughter. I could have swore I heard something on the roof too. When I left the camper to come to the house, down in the bottoms, which is north of me, so I say down in the bottoms, but it's actually north of where I was. I heard something make a owl call, whoo, 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 but it was so loud it reverberated through my ears and vibrated my chest. I mean, it was loud. Right after that, it did a
Quote,
dog.
500-pound owl.
Yeah, yeah. And then it made another weird sound. I was like, "What the hell is this?" Going on. So I was like, "Okay, it's got to be my guest." I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. So I chalked it up to that. Went back to the camper. Well, that winter, after DA and I did a show on the Big W, the Wendigo. I'm only going to say it once. The Wendigo, never mind. I almost caught myself. I catch myself. Big W.
Beetlejuice.
I actually had, yeah. And I've actually got this on. It's hard to hear it, but I actually got this on my YouTube channel. I actually had something mimicking my dogs to the north of me in the woods, north of my trailer, mimicking my dog. And whenever I pulled out my camera to catch it and realized, oh crap, my light's on, and put the camera to my chest, is when the last time you hear it mimic. And whatever it was followed me back out the truck. And this whole time I'm asking Diego, man, I got some weird shit going on here. I was like, this is not normal. This is not normal. And he's like, dude, you packing? I was like, dude, yeah, I'm packing. And it literally heard it walking on my pop-up camper, which is next to my shop, following me back out to my truck. I was sitting in my truck, and it sounded like tree limbs scraping all different sides of my truck. And the closest tree to me was 6 foot away and was a small cedar. And then all of a sudden it sounded like a wood knock. And then the guy that was there helped me get my truck going goes, I thought I heard that. And then it was closer and louder. And he freaked out. He went back to his truck, grabbed his pistol. You got effing Bigfoot on your property. I said, buddy, I know I got Bigfoot. I said, that's not a Bigfoot. And that was probably the scariest thing I ever had happen as far as noises go that I had happen out here that I've heard. But I've heard strange stuff all over the world. That was the weirdest one and the scariest one for me. We got another question here from Gary. He says, what's the panel's thought on Gugwe? That's the scariest thing to me. Robby, I'll let you start this one.
So, or they want to know.
What's your thoughts on Gugwe?
My thoughts on the Gugwe are, I will, and DA will tell you, I'll usually go chasing after just about anything without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I probably am not going to just go running off in the woods after, because those are kind of sort of scary. I really don't want to mess with. They're fascinating and interesting study from here, but I don't want to mess with one of those out in the wild. If they're anything like we think they are, then yeah. Because here's the thing: if they're anything like what they supposedly look like, baboons or mandrills, those are nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to mess with any of those, and especially if it's a 10 to 12 foot mandrill that weighs over 1,000 pounds. Yeah, that's just not something that I just want to mess with. So, William?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Gugwe, I can honestly tell you that I haven't encountered one yet. I use that very loosely. But I do know a lot of Native people that have, and they tend to leave the area pretty quick. A lot of the tales, they will chase you out of the area, and they are notorious for throwing things out of anger, and they just don't like any humans whatsoever. A lot of the legends and stories coming out of indigenous country is around the Algonquin and the Ojibwe people, because they're pretty much right there on the border of the U.S. and Canada. And that's where a majority of the sightings of the Gugwe are happening right now with Native people. That's not to say that they're not elsewhere, but, I had a hard time with it growing up too, because our people, we didn't, in the old days, we didn't have names, these specific names for things. So we would basically generalize it to whatever the native predators that were in the area reminded us of it, because we had no idea about the great apes and stuff in Africa and all that. So we basically called it the bear man. Now, calling it the bear man meant that it had the snout, which is how they describe the Gugway, and it being very vicious like a grizzly bear. So yeah, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, to have it come up on a couple of those. It's been said that they travel in pairs, but you know, you don't know. I mean, they could travel in packs just like wolves.
Mm-hmm. Jessica?
I have not encountered a Gugway yet. And but I do know two of the more well-known cases of Gugway, and one of them is the Beast of Seven Shoots. And I think Robby, you and I did a show on that together.
Yep.
You came on my show.
Yep.
We talked about that. That's a cool one. That was out of Canada. And the thing had a dead animal it was holding. I think it looked like to me it looked like a dog, but it could have been a raccoon. It could have been anything.
Fox,
But it
coyote. It looked canine.
It did. It did. That was a pretty massive Gugway, if that was a Gugway. I think it was. But there's also pretty well-known stories of the Gugway that hide in the fog, and I think that's at Yellowstone Park. I'm pretty sure, and they attribute some of the missing people, the missing hikers, to the Gugway hiding in the fog, and I really resonated with that story because when I was doing some field research up in North Georgia in the mountains, we encountered one night a fog that came down from the top of the mountain that was following us, and when we would speed up, the fog would speed up. When we would stop, it would stop. When we would go slow, it would go slow, and it almost had like a consciousness to it. And that was one of the more scary things that ever happened to me in the woods up there so far. I'll never forget that night. We were actually kind of scared that night of the fog.
Heck yeah. Let's see. Was that everybody, or DA? Have you answered yet, bud? I can't remember.
I hadn't, but if you want to go to the next question, that's fine.
Oh, you can answer this one. I'm trying to get caught up on here.
Okay.
I finally got somewhat caught up and got behind again.
Well, the name Gugway is actually an Anglicization of the Micmac word Cookway, which means face eater. They're big enough they could definitely tear your face off with a single bite, like biting an apple. William and I had a long conversation about him one day, and he brought up the Lakota legend of the Bear Man, which when you hear the description of the Bear Man, it makes a lot of sense. It seems to fit the mold. Some encounters with the Gugway, they say it has 3 toes, and others they say 5. But I do know they have claws on the tips of their hands and the ends of their toes. They tend to be far more aggressive than your average Bigfoot. And if they travel in groups, it's small groups. I think it's because of that aggression. They generally won't tolerate any large numbers. It probably, like a large male would probably keep a couple of females around, but it wouldn't tolerate any other adult males. They're just hyper aggressive, hyper territorial, and that is one thing you do not want to run into in the woods.
Don't forget the thing down the road that looked like King Kong up in the
Me personally, I've never ran into a Gugway, and honestly, I'm not scared of a whole lot. But running into one of them evil creatures, I'm not sure I want to. I know from my research, stuff like DA talked about. I've also found the Native American tribe stories talk about how Shiai Tonka and Gugway were the same at one time, and then they had a difference of opinion basically about humans. One wanted to hunt and eat humans, the other one did not, and therefore that's how Gugway came about. That's really my experiences on that. We have another one here from the girl and her gong. Has anyone on the panel had an encounter with Dogman, and what was it like?
Oh yeah,
a few of us have had encounters.
We'll let GA take the lead on that one.
I actually saw one in the northern part of LBL about 10:30 in the morning, broad daylight. It was about 6.5 feet tall, and it wasn't built super powerfully. But I know a lot of people describe their Dogman encounters as being terrifying. Mine wasn't. It was like when it realized I had seen it, it was more of a, I got to get the hell out of here moment for it. It took off fast. It didn't stick around, but it did look like an upright dog. It didn't look like a very powerfully built man walking on two legs with dog features. It looked like a dog on two legs. It had the narrower chest, the odd slump to the shoulders, but it was incredibly quick. But I've encountered what I believe were dog men at night, but I couldn't see them in LBL and here in Missouri at the Joe Bald rec area. Robby and I ran into something that night, and I believe it was trying to separate Robby from the rest of us, and just about got it done. Mainly because Robby has a tendency of just kind of going toward it. And now Noah, my youngest son Noah, has the official job title of the official Robby Wrangler. He's got to keep Robby on a leash when we go out.
Anybody else want to go before me?
Go ahead, William.
My first encounter with Dogman, Tracy and I were actually up late at night, probably around 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And we had to walk her little dog, Jacob. And this is around 2018, maybe beginning of 2019. It was a clear night, moon was out, but it was so dark because of the cloud cover over where we lived. The moon being out wasn't doing any good as far as lighting up the terrain. So we were walking the dog out, and we're out in the country. So, we kind of, we carry protection with us whenever we walk the dog, because you never know when you're going to come across something, And we both heard it coming from the tree area on the property, where a growl reverberated against our chest, and basically our inner organs were just shaking. And we couldn't figure out what it was, and it was a canine growl. Well, I stayed back. I let her walk ahead a little bit with Jacob, the dog, and I stayed down back about maybe 20 feet from them. And I had my sidearm on me, and I pulled my sidearm out, just keeping it at my side in my right hand. And I saw this thing jump from the center of the tree across the road. And the road is probably, 8 feet wide. It was just a dirt road. And the next thing I know, there was two of them in between the parked vehicles in the dark, growling at us. And something just told me, just raise your weapon and just take 2 steps forward. So I raised the weapon at him, and I take 2 steps forward. I got the flashlight there, and I turned the flashlight on and shined it on him. And what I saw just completely blew my mind. I mean, you talk about seeing a canine cryptid on 2 legs. You don't really expect to see it. Okay. It's something, it's something different from seeing Bigfoot. As I'm sure DA can tell you, but yeah, it's definitely a different feeling altogether you get when you see these things. But then again, just like DA's thing, as soon as I stepped towards it, they both ran off. They were probably
Okay, am I back, guys?
Yep.
Sorry, man. That was weird. I don't know what's going on.
Am I back, guys?
My computer just went all haywire on me and locked me out of everything. Wow. Sorry about that, folks. That was
It's
weird.
what it is, man.
Eric, you've been watching us enough to know that happens just about every single time something like that happens.
Glitches happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, holy cow, what's going on here? I was glad it stayed alive, though. Did everybody answer that question? I'm sorry. So I missed part of it. Did everybody get to that question?
Now, William was in the middle of answering his.
Yeah, I was just finishing
go ahead,
it up
William.
how they stood up and just basically ran away from me, like DA's experience was. They didn't want to stick around, so it's like they didn't want to interact with me. So I found that pretty odd. But it's a different feeling when you come across one of them compared to when you come across a Sasquatch, Bigfoot type of an entity out there. It's just, I don't know. It's just a different feeling because your mind clicks back to like where, I don't know why, but it's like automatically thinking werewolf. You know what I mean? And that kind of a fear, from watching those movies when you're kids, and getting all freaked out at night, and it was just that kind of a feeling. Just the growls alone, shaking your insides, just it messes with you.
Yeah.
So, Jessica, do you have you come to the conclusion that our second one was what I said it was? Because if you have, I'll let you tell that story, and I'll tell my LBL.
Okay, well, it very well could have been Dogman up in North Georgia when Robby and I were in that field. The first year that we went, it was 100% Sasquatch, no doubt. The second year we went, we actually had my son with us, and so we were, of course, we're in protection mode, right? Like protective mode, and so we've got my son walking in between Robby and I, and we go up to that same spot, and we got surrounded by something again. It was very similar to the year before, but this time it had a very ominous feel to it, and things were crawling around us this time. It was a little different, and I think the consensus was that it was not Bigfoot this time. Now, what was it? Could have been Dogman. It could have been anything, really. But it was definitely something. And we got out of there really fast. But otherwise, I mean, I've gone on some investigations for Dogman. I just recently went to Alabama on a Dogman, I guess you call it a hunt, right? But we were just going out there to do an investigation because one of the guys on our team, Cryptid Warfare Operators, he had gone out there with his dad and his nephew, who are all Marines, by the way, all three of them. And they had gone hiking and camping, and they walked about 5 miles into this forest. And at night, they actually, around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock that night, they got surrounded by something, and they thought that they were convinced it was Dogmen. And this national forest actually does have reports of Dogmen, a lot of reports of Dogmen, but also very aggressive Bigfoots and families and like huge, like big groups. I don't mean huge groups, but like, 4 or 5 sets, like in a group, and a Bigfoot. So we ended up going out there to do an investigation about a month or two ago. And man, that was wild, because we got to hike in deep into the woods, and we were expecting to encounter Dogmen out there. But I think what we did encounter, because we did have a lot of activity that night, the nights we were out there, I think it was a really aggressive Bigfoot. And I don't think it was Dogman, because we ended up finding some prints that ended up being Dogman. So, and I was telling some people at the Squatch Out over the weekend, a lot of times when I go on investigations for Dogman, it usually ends up being Bigfoot, and people just assume it's Dogman. But we find sign of Bigfoot instead of Dogman out there. So,
we don't
but
go
I know
out
there's a lot of
looking for
Dogman.
anything in particular. We just go out looking for evidence. If it turns out to be Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever, we don't go out with that with any expectations. We just go out to see what we find.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what we do too as a team. But the investigation sent us on a Dogman hunt, kind of. But I was like, let's keep an open mind, because it could be Bigfoot. Because you have to kind of, first of all, you got to be aware of kind of everything that's out there too, any kind of possibilities. But we found sign of Bigfoot out there for sure.
That's cool. Robby?
So yeah, like Jessica said, I personally believe that second time we were in her spot up there in Georgia, I think that we were getting surrounded by a bunch of Dogmen. But I don't have any kind of reservations about saying what happened in LBL was a Dogman, because there's only 3 times that I felt that feeling that I got in LBL. When we were in Joe Ball, me and DA, the time in Georgia with me and Jessica, and this time in the LBL. So we were down there for the meet and greet for the Woodwalkers and Sawdust Beast, and I think there was one other group that was putting it on. But we went out with Greg Ogles, and I had no idea where the exact location we were at. I knew we were in around DeMumbers Bay, but I didn't know the significance of where we were at until later on. And then once I found out the significance of where we were at, and Jessica and DA both know this because I've told them this, but once I found out the significance, that kind of, it went from being, okay, that was kind of scary. Once we thought about it, to holy crap. So fast forward, we had been out there for a little while. Johnny and Greg were seeing orbs. I think I saw some because there again, me being me, I had walked about probably 100 yards away from everybody else down that little dirt road. So I'm out in the open, standing out in the middle of the trail, just being me. Well, I start hearing stuff walking in the woods to our right. So I ease my way back over to Greg, and I said, "There's something walking in the woods over there." My daughter's boyfriend Tyler, he was wearing a parabolic mic. Well, he started actually focusing over that way, and he can hear something talking. That's when Johnny started doing the owl calls and got the two perfect responses. Then the one, it was like, okay, we're tired of playing. So we started moving back over towards the car because my daughter it was kind of cold, and so she was in the car and was teeth chattering. So we started working our way back over there. When we got back over, we were parked next to this little cemetery, and Tyler and I were standing next to the passenger side of the car, and Johnny and Greg were kind of back behind us, about maybe 15, 20 feet away from us. Well, as Tyler and I are kind of sitting there whispering and talking, we hear something kind of off to our left, just a little ways down this little, what we thought was just a little hill. And we stopped, and I got Greg and Johnny's attention and said, there's something over here. So we all stopped and started listening, and you can still kind of hear it moving. So I motioned to him and told him I was going to turn my headlamp on. So I turned my headlamp on, and I'm looking kind of down this hill, and I think it was probably 25-ish feet away, kind of down this hill. There's a tree, and the tree was probably about that big around. As soon as I turned the lights on, I see two eyes looking back up at us. I mean, just bright green eye shine. So I kind of froze. My daughter's boyfriend, Tyler, standing behind me. And Tyler's 6'8". He's not a small kid. He's big. He went into that paradigm shift because he saw something he couldn't explain. Because it wasn't a small animal. Because, most of the time you hit a small animal with a light, William, this, they're going to take off.
Exactly.
No, this thing just looked at us. You'd see a blink, and then you might see one eye kind of disappear behind the tree because it was kind of looking at us. Not the swaying like you see a Sasquatch, but more like almost in a canine fashion. You can, thinking about it, I can almost see him doing that dog thing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Tyler is pretty much gone into full panic mode. He starts, I just want you to know we're all armed. We're armed up here. He said that like 15, 20 times because it was, he could not explain what he was looking at. Well, Johnny gets over there. He's like, I don't see it. So I grab a hold of him and pull him in front of me where he can see. And he's like, oh, crap. And, but to back up a little bit, as soon as I turned that light on, Johnny saw something up to back sort of behind us. He saw some kind of shadow just kind of step further into the shadows. It was just kind of like right at the edge of that halo of my light to where it just kind of stepped off and he couldn't tell what it was. So when he's around there, we're just looking at this thing has never moved other than, just a little bit, but it hasn't like tried to run off. Well, keep in mind what I said. We heard that they kind of saw that shadow. We hear something behind us. We all kind of turn and look, and when we turn back around, it's gone. So we're like, okay, well, maybe it's a possum, it's a raccoon, it was this, it was that, We're like, okay, no big deal. Well, we go back the next morning. Johnny's like, or next afternoon after lunch, Johnny said, we need to get back over there so we can kind of get a better lay of the land, maybe take some, and Tyler's like, yeah, we can take some pictures, some establishing shots, and figure some stuff out. But we go back over there, and Tyler stands exactly where he and I was standing, and I walk down to where this tree was. And when I look around in the daylight and can see, we're basically in the middle of three draws. Had one this way, and then another one coming in, and they all funneled into a fourth one. So I get to the tree that it was standing at, and I said, "All right, Tyler, I'm gonna start kind of stooping down because we're thinking this thing's about 2 to 3 inches off the ground because its eyes were like it looked like they were at the bottom of the tree." But I get down there and I kind of notice, what looks like 2 to 3 inches up there. Because I'm going down, Tyler says, "All right, stop." It was 2 to 3 feet off the ground. Is where this thing's head was. So
It was crouched down in that draw.
yeah, it was crouched down that draw. And then Johnny said, he come over and was looking. He said, "No, well, it had to be further back away from the tree." I said, "Johnny, it couldn't have gone any further back because if it did, it would have gone up the hill." Because I was standing literally like in the middle of that V of those first 2 draws. So that if I just moved back, I would have been moving up, and the eyes would have been higher than they were where we were at. So that said right there, it was standing right where I was standing. So whatever it was big. Well, then we go back and we start talking to people and telling them where we had this. Come to find out, we were within 100 yards of the original site from the 80s where that family was. I'm not going to say the word, but everybody that knows this knows the original story of the LBL. We were within 100 yards of that. So there is no doubt in my mind and there was more than one, and they were trying to separate us. We were being hunted. Like DA and I were in Joe Ball that night.
That was green eye shine as well.
Yep. Same exact color.
Yeah, the one I had encountered was green eye shine too. So
if I remember correctly, you both have experienced green and yellow eye shine dealing with that, haven't you? If I remember correctly.
You know, that's interesting. Actually, it's really interesting because we talked a lot this weekend about old green eyes up in Chickamauga, Georgia, and this is an entity that I really enjoy talking about. It's been spotted since pre-Civil War days. Okay, and people were saying that there are accounts of old green eyes going out on the battlefield and eating the corpses of the dead soldiers out there on the field. But they say that you can still see old green eyes today, and some people have said that they think the old green eyes is a gugway, actually, or some sort of a dogman. So that would be interesting if what you guys have been seeing had green eyes, like dogman green eyes, and then old green eyes up in Chickamauga. It would make more sense that he would be a dogman or maybe even a gugway. I don't know. So far as dogman, about the closest thing I got as far as experiences on that, besides I don't know what's hunted me in Kansas when I was on tank trails. It's fishing the ponds on the tank trails of Fort Riley, Kansas. Back in the mid to late 90s, along the Niagara River, there's a highway close to me called W Highway. And we were having a lot of livestock being mutilated. And like in a 1 week period, like hundreds of livestock were killed in this 1 week period. Now, conservation told us it was a pack of bull mastiffs. Funny how it always goes to bull mastiffs, but that was their excuse. We at the time were
lazy as hell.
Yeah. You know, us at the time, we thought maybe it was cougar because not only have I followed a cougar down the road, I've been hunted by cougars along the Niagara River. We had cougars on game cams back in that time there. So we were thinking that. Well, I didn't know about dogman at the time, but the more I started learning about dogman, the more I start realizing I'm thinking all this livestock, our horses, our cattle, our goats, our sheep, and all this stuff, and our dogs were getting killed. The fronts of their throats were ripped out. There was large large scrapes along the sides of their bellies. I mean, massive. I've got a big head. We're roughly about 12-inch long scrapes down the side of their. Not 12 inch, I'm sorry, around 9-inch long scrapes along the side of their ribs, and their bellies were sliced open and it was eaten from the inside, like they took some choice organs out. I'm starting wondering if that wasn't dogman related, because we know along the Niagara River, there's several dogman reports, just like there's several Bigfoot reports all up and down the Niagara River. And that is probably where I'm at. I can't say. I mean, I have no clue if that's what it is, but I don't think a cougar is going to sit there and kill, several hundred livestock. I think it was a total of around 150, 250 livestock killed during that 1 week time frame. And a cougar is just not going to do that. I mean, and it was all up and down W Highway along the Niagara River. For me, that was probably the closest I've got to it. I can tell you at Fort Riley, Kansas, at nighttime, just like Fort Benning, Georgia, there is some weird crap that travels them areas at nighttime. Stuff, yeah, it's interesting. We have another one. This is for the panel. I guess it's my turn to start first. Moon wants to know, poll for the channel in the chat. Bigfoot, are they human species or ape species? I kind of follow two theories because I'm trying to figure that out as well, Moon. I think we all are. My theory is leading towards either beings we can actually mate with them and create offspring. Could they be where we came from, Homo erectus and stuff like that? Did they continue straight where we branched off and became something different, which would be why our DNA matches enough where we can create offspring? B, and this is something I'm learning more, and the more and more I look into this, the more and more I'm starting to lean this way, especially with the recent studies in science, is Bigfoot very well could be the remnants of Neanderthal. Between what's going on, hearing some old stories and stuff like that. It's nothing that I confirm. This is just kind of two theories where I'm at, which also makes sense why we can mate with them, because we know for a fact, it's DNA proven, most Europeans have Neanderthal DNA in them. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at on that. Let's see, whose turn is it to go second on this one? I'm not keeping track. I'll be honest with you guys. Robby, I'll let you Robby, I'll let you knock this one out next.
Well, I'm one of those that I go where the evidence takes me, and personally, the only thing that I've ever experienced in any of my times out in the woods is just shows me just an animal. Now, that's not me saying that it can't be any of this other stuff. I think it's an undiscovered species of North American great ape. Am I wrong? Am I right? Who knows? Because that's what we say. There's no experts in this, so that's just my opinion. I think it's just an animal, plain and simple. I don't think we have to always, just because we don't understand. And that's the way that human nature is to attach stuff to things we don't understand. And I've got Native American in me too, and I understand all that stuff, and I respect all that stuff. But I think even then, it's still, even though it might have been connected to the Great Spirit, I still think it was still just an animal. Now there may have been things that it could do, but still, in the end, I believe it's just an animal. Maybe a divine conduit, if you want to look at it that way. But I just think it was just an animal that things may have gotten worked through, but is what it is.
Mm-hmm. DA, you want to knock it out next?
Oh, sure. When you look at actual evolution down through the millennia, humans are technically on the same branch of the tree as the great apes. We are a primate. We're a higher primate. We diverged from the path that the great apes took many millennia ago. And that's why, we have developed technology and continued on, with higher brain function. But there were other stops along that genetic pathway. The discovery they made in Africa, Lucy, Homo erectus, Homo habilis.
Mm-hmm.
If you look all along the way, there are lots of different examples of these primitive, more human looking but less ape looking apes. They diverged along the timeline. Some worked out, some didn't. So to say that a Bigfoot is human-like is okay. It's also ape-like, but just because it's human-like doesn't make it human. It very well could be. I mean, we have no idea how intelligent they are, but at the same time, I think it's just another stop along that evolutionary scale where where reaching for where we made it. They diverged at some point, and apparently it's fairly close. If a lot of the legends are to be believed, that they have abducted and bred with humans before. So if that's possible, then they are quite close to us on the evolutionary scale. But it doesn't necessarily make them human. Dolphins are rated to be as smart as humans, but they're not humans. They're dolphins. They are still an animal. No matter how smart they are, they're still an animal. We're animals. So the question isn't really, is it human or is it an animal? We're all animals. It's just, how smart is this animal, and at what place does it is its place among that evolutionary kind of pathway? So yes, it's got to be fairly close to us, but that doesn't necessarily make them sentient.
Jessica, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a wonderful explanation, DA. I appreciate that. I agree with DA on that. I also wanted to point out that now, if this is a real map, there was a map put out by, I think, the Air Force potentially, and it did classify Sasquatch as being a dangerous animal. Okay, so, but yeah, I support DA's answer. Okay, but I just didn't want to point that out.
That's cool. William?
And to follow up on that, just because it's an animal doesn't mean it's not particularly, it couldn't be sentient. They could be intelligent enough to be sentient. We don't know. And the Air Force classified them as a dangerous animal. Humans are dangerous animals. So yes, it's an animal, but just how intelligent it is, we have no idea.
Yeah, I think some are super smart and some are just looking for food all the time.
There's a big difference between technological intelligence and survival intelligence. If you put a human up against one of those in a survival situation, a Bigfoot will win every single time. You could throw Bear Grylls or Les Stroud up against a Bigfoot in a survival situation, the Bigfoot's going to win. But if you're expecting Bigfoot to survive in downtown New York, it's a whole different animal.
Well, I mean, just in here, this is what I always say: look at nature that we already know. To get the answers that we don't understand. Look at dogs. Look how many different types of dogs there are. There are some dogs that you look at them and you can spell a word and they understand what you're saying. But there are some dogs that that won't come in out of the rain, just lay it out in the mud. They're just, oh, look at him, he's just a dumb little dog. It's the same way. Just because you've got a dog right here that can basically spell and understand, a 250 word vocabulary, and you got a dog over here that doesn't know his name, and you have to pick him up and take him to his water bowl. Does that mean that this one's a dog and this one's not? No, it just means this dog's got more intelligence than this dog. Same thing. There may be certain types of these creatures that have a vast superiority of intellect to some of the other ones. Now, I don't know what causes that, but same thing with humans. You got your Albert Einsteins, and then you got your not Albert Einsteins. The ones DA and I have dealt with throughout our career.
William?
Well, the best I can tell you is what I was encountered personally myself, and from what my ancestors, my elders told me. My father, when I was 16 years old, he pulled me up to the kitchen table at midnight one night, and he proceeded to tell me how there were 4 distinct types of Sasquatch, Big Brother. And he proceeded to talk about the big ones that come down from Alaska and into the Yukon territory on into Washington and Oregon area and parts of California, how they were big and mean and more apish than human. In other words, they would have some human features, but they would be more aggressive, like a gorilla would be, protecting its group. Okay. Then he went further on to tell me about there were smaller ones coming up from South America that basically migrated from South America across the Southwest into Arkansas, Louisiana swamps, and all the way over into Florida. He said they were smaller and they were more aggressive, in nature, but they were smaller than the big ones coming out of Alaska. And I mean, you're talking a height difference of probably of anywhere from the ones being in the southern swamp areas being 7 to 8 feet tall compared to 10 to 15 feet tall coming from Alaska. And then he talked about the Gugway or Bear Man. You know, how they basically hated everything and everybody, and they were just mean and ill-tempered and basically wanted to kill whatever it come across, whether it was human or not. And they were, you know, not looking as much human as they were animal, okay, because of the snout that they had. And then my dad, the last one he described to me was the fact that the one was that was had the human features, were the ones that we encountered mostly in our area. But you know, when I was growing up, I encountered the small ones in the swamps, and I encountered the human looking ones. And you know, I can honestly say that there is a dramatic difference. You know, I mean, it's like I've always said, whenever if you're stuck living in a swamp, okay, say the smaller ones, that my dad explained coming up from South America. And the only reason he basically believed that was because native people talked amongst themselves. Okay. And we kept a lot of this stuff away from people for the longest time. I've told Jessica about this and you, Eric, about this, if you recall.
Yep.
You know, we keep things from other communities and other groups of people for a specific reason. And usually it's to protect either the land or the species. But, you know, if I lived in a swampy area and had to fight, you know, big cats, wild hogs, gators, you know, water moccasins, you know, cottonmouths, you know, all kinds of stuff for food. Not to mention, God knows what else is out there, you know, which, I mean, they're discovering new species every day. You know, I would be in a foul mood anyways, you know, having to live in that kind of an environment. So I can almost understand how the smaller ones would be mean. But to make a long story short, you know, growing up and listening to my elders and stuff and what they were telling me and what my father told me kind of made sense to me, because different regions of the country in North America, as a matter of fact, are going to be different. Your body is going to adjust over a period of time to extreme cold and, you know, and extremely high environments, you know. Whereas if you're growing up in a swamp, you'll probably even develop a slight webbing between your toes because you're in the swamp all the time. You know, there's genetic, you know, kind of almost like a mutations that can happen over time. Okay. So I do believe there is a distinct variety of them. I wouldn't group them all up into one, because in a lot of the ceremonies that we did, and you know, Eric and I have talked about this in depth on the podcast. You know, when we do ceremonies and stuff to protect the land, whether it's burial grounds or whatnot, we'll call forth, you know, upon you know the spirits and the ancestors to pull out a negative entity into that environment to protect the environment and our ancestors' bones. It's just what we did. You know, this is things that we did. We're not going to divulge it to anybody, because who divulged it to us when they stuck us on reservations? You know, I mean, it is what it is. So, I mean, you got to be able to separate your distinctive, you know, real life flesh and blood cryptids compared to your legendary supernatural type of cryptids. Okay. And the one thing that I've always found to be the differentiating factor is the color of eyes. Okay. The eyes are the window to the soul. And whenever we called forth something supernatural, it usually had red glowing eyes. Okay. or eyes like fire, you know, the orangeness and redness of the fire. So, you know, and the green-eyed ones and the yellow-eyed ones, you know, they're probably more adapt to being the real flesh and blood. Okay. And thank goodness I've only had a couple encounters with red-eyed ones. So,
well, we are a little bit past the top of the hour, so if you guys want to take a minute to do what you need to do, I'm going to play a video on Dark Angel Medical real quick, talk about that for a few minutes, then we'll get right back into the questions. If I can get this to work.
I'm going to try and make a cup of coffee, so I may be a minute.
Guys, if you're looking for a top-notch, one of the absolute very best trauma and first aid kits on the market, Dark Angel Medical is the way to go. You're going to be spending a little bit of money. I'm not going to lie to you. But Doc has a kit for life program. If you use it to save a life and you send him the information, he replaces what you use in that kit for free for life. He is the OG when it comes to kit for life. I have two of them. I have this one, which I carry in the field, which was in the commercial. And I also have one that sits on the headrest of my pickup. I don't go anywhere without my Dark Angel Medical. It's my absolute best. I still have a first aid kit that I built up from an old Army rucksack. There you go. Yeah, DA's got them too. They're nice, man. These are the absolute very best. For right now, we're going to use DA's code Cryptid20 for 20% off. You can use FHA and SHA to buy these kits. I promise you, I am not making no kickback on this. I am just a huge fan of his product. I love his product so much that I asked him if I could promote it on the show, and I was so blessed that he allowed me to do it. So if you're looking for a great trauma kit or first aid kit, go over and see darkangelmedical.com. And you remember, use Cryptid20. Let me get back to the chats. I know I'm a little behind on here. If I have missed anybody's questions, I apologize. Give me some time. I am the only one running this right now. So, hey, Walking. Let me get back up here. I know I'm like way far behind. This chat's flowing. Y'all are awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to get back up to where I was. Man, there was a lot more chat since I last looked. But yeah, I mean, this stuff is great. We're having a great show today. I'm so happy about this. That was a funny comment there. DA has talked about, okay, yeah, the eaters during the live. Hey, William.
Hey, sorry.
Trying to get no worries, man. My internet's being weird, so it's taking me a little bit to scroll up to get back to the next question, which I lost. And I'll tell you what, I apologize. If I have not got to your question yet, please repost it in all caps. I'm going to start back down here. Just because, man, this thing is way, way up there. And a lot more has went since the last time, too. I looked at one. Trying to get to it.
Nothing worse than
Come
instant
on,
coffee.
dude. Quit legging. Gary wants to know, the Alaskan hairy man is just behind the Gugwe as far as scary to me. Oh, man. I thought it was a question. I seen it all caps. Yeah, I mean, that is a scary dude, no doubt. I mean, that's another name for Bigfoot is the hairy man. So I mean, it'd be right up there with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I've lost my deal, so we're just going to go back down here at the bottom and see who started because they're just. This is awesome. This chat's flowing so good. Hey, Demos, how's it going? I do have a question for Birdie in chat. Actually, this would be a good one. Me and William has talked about this many times. Do you believe there is a difference between Wolfman, Werewolf, and Dogman? And either one of you guys go first. Don't matter on it.
Jessica, you go ahead.
Okay, what were the things that we needed to? What are the differences? Which ones were you asking?
Do you believe excuse me? Do you believe there's a difference between Wolfman, Dogman, and Werewolf?
Okay. Yes. Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess so. I've always been. Here's the weird thing: is that I always thought I knew the difference between a werewolf and let me go back. The definition of a werewolf. Okay, the definition of a werewolf. Do you know that there's so many different people that have different ideas of what a werewolf is now? And so my definition of a werewolf always used to be, and kind of still is, a human that transforms into a wolf-like creature. That's what I thought a werewolf was. But all these interviews that I've done and all the people that have had conversations about it, people who've been on my shows, some people say that they're actually born werewolves. They never transform from human to wolf form. Okay, so it's a little confusing, okay, because I always thought a werewolf was like a human that transformed, but there's definitely a difference between a werewolf and a dogman, no doubt. Okay, so I don't know. I need some expertise here, actually. I know William has some answers about this.
Oh, sure. Put the old Indian on the block here. Well, there are distinct differences from especially the Dogman and werewolf. They don't get along. Okay, let's put it that way. I had an Ojibwe brother of mine, a real dear friend of mine that we were part of the same group, let's just say, that was Native American causes and stuff like that we fought for, basically, literally, against the FBI and National Guard. He actually proceeded to tell me about a hunting experience that he had, and I told this was it this morning, Eric, when I said that, when I described it, or was it Friday night?
Oh man, I can't remember.
I think it was
Friday. Might have been night. This morning.
Yeah, I think it was Friday night.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it was, because we got in a real in-depth conversation about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, the way he described it to me was it was 2017 was his first encounter, and he was a big avid woodsman. He could do everything, just like we can, and he would track, he would hunt, he would do all kinds of that survival skills out in the wild and stuff. And he's ex-military. He was a big dude, he was probably 6'4", 6'5", and every bit of 280 pounds. So he was a big guy. But he told me, he said in 2017, he said he was out hunting one time up in Upper Michigan. Okay. And he said he came across his area where he had his tree stand, and he noticed that in a distance in the tree in the forest was this flickering orange and yellow glows coming off of the trees like it was a fire. And he proceeded to go up closer to it, and he said that what he saw literally just made his jaw drop. He said he saw 7 or 8 humans basically dancing and drinking around this fire and having like a rave or a party or something out there, which later on he believes he mentioned to me that it might have been some kind of like covenant. So anyways, he proceeded to just sit there in the dark and watch them for about a half an hour, and he said eventually that these people changed. They somehow or another, their form going from human to a wolf, basically, on all fours. And then they would stand up and jump over the flames and the fire and stuff. And he said, Nighthawk, he said, I'm not crazy, am I? I said, no. I said, we have legends of that. I said, we have our own, skinwalker that we do, and that's the first time I'm saying it, by the way. And the last. But he described it as being terrifying to him that he saw this. He didn't think that it was humanly possible for a human to change. And we talked about demonic possession and all that with, doing the ceremonies and stuff for the black arts. And he went back to that same spot in 2023 because out of his curiosity and his fear, he wanted to confront his fear. Well, at that time, he said there were people there that were changing into these werewolf things. And he noticed that there was movement behind him. And he thought, great, now I got these things, whatever they are, if they're human or canine, they're sneaking up on me. But he was in this high grass and he was down low enough to where he could hide himself. So he hunkered down, and he said on both sides of him flashed these dark, fast beings. And that's how he described it. He couldn't even tell what it was until they got up to where the fire was. And here he said that it was 6, 3 on each side of the fire, with the 8 people being by the fire that changed into some type of a werewolf. And these 6 beings that got up into the fire were bigger than the werewolves. They were every bit of 8, 9 feet tall compared to 6.5, 7 foot tall. And he said they proceeded to fight. And he said that it literally, he watched it as long as he could. Okay. And basically, he said as soon as he saw one's bottom jaw getting clawed off with one of the dogmen, he said he just couldn't stomach anymore. And he basically left. He hasn't been back to that area in Michigan for the longest time. Now, this guy is an avid hunter, an avid outdoorsman. He's a military vet. He's not a drunkard. He's not on drugs. He was begging me to help him figure out what was going on. And, we went through the motions for about a month, texting back and forth, about how, these things are out there, and there is a dramatic difference. I mean, you have your curses, you have your possessions, and I can speak firsthand from the possession part of it, for the walker changing ceremony. And then you have things that are just permanently in a canine status, which is what the dogman is. The dogman doesn't change form whatsoever. Okay. The werewolves usually run on 4 feet on the ground. Okay. A wolf man, and I use that term loosely, has been described as being cursed. Okay, it's a curse, not a possession, but a curse, and that when a human changes into a wolf man form or a wolf woman, we'll have to do it both genders here. Basically, the ears are different on the wolf man. Okay, the ears are going to be more on the side of the head than on the top of the head, like a regular dog man. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing that I have realized that is an eliminating factor is the proof of having a tail. Okay, if something has a tail, it's more canine than anything, so it's not going to be a wolf man or a wolf woman changing form, because you're not going to grow a tail out your ass. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. Okay, so
there are people that are born with vestigial tails. It just
yes,
comes off
there
the end
are,
of the
and
spine.
yes, there are. Yeah, there are, and that has to do with the fact that we have pig DNA in us, and we have monkey DNA in us, and we have basically lizard DNA in us. So yes, the human species can grow a tail. That has been scientifically proven. In fact, our good friend Doug Hychek can tell you that's one of the things too that happens with our species. And our species is changing every day because of environments changing and climate change. But yeah, there has been distinct differences from all three. Now the werewolf, Romulus and Remus come to mind. One bitten by bat and the other bitten by wolf. Okay, one cursed to walk the form of a werewolf forever on 4 feet and 2 legs, at times, never to change back to what he was to begin with. And the same with the bat, but the bat was able to change back and forth from human form to being, a human bat combination in the DNA. Now that's just, is it a wise tale or did it actually happen? I wasn't around, so I don't know. But that's what I've always understood the differences to be. A wolf man or a woman is a curse. A werewolf is something that's born a werewolf and can't change back. And then you have Dogman, which is always a Dogman.
We actually got some questions now I can get to. Walken wants to know, I have a question. Is it a constant that cryptids, Dogman, are mostly functional in a psychosis state? I don't know on that one. I really don't have a good answer for that one. I don't know. Any of you guys got a good answer for that one?
Anybody a psychiatrist out there?
Yeah, no comment.
I'm not. I'm a psychopath, man. Well, I'm sorry, Walken. We really don't have a good answer on that. I don't know. I mean, the only psychosis part I know of is they're known to use project images in your brain, which can cause you to see something differently than what you're actually seeing. That's about the closest comment I have on something like that.
Yeah, but is that something that they're doing to us, or is that just the human species popping that image up in our brain because it can't handle the overload of information? I mean, we don't really know yet. I mean, we're not experts. We have all these questions just like everybody else does.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting either way. I really don't have a good answer for that. We got another one here from Demos. Is it possible for shapeshifters to transform into Sasquatch, or they appear to transform into them via black magic, similar to werewolves and humanoid? Oops.
Well, you all know my feelings on that.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
Let's hear it. Because this one's not really in my wheelhouse, so I'd like to hear your answer.
Okay, repeat the question again so everybody can hear it.
Is it possible for shapeshifters to transform into Sasquatch or appear to transform into them via black magic, similar to werewolves or humanoid?
All right. And this is just a theory, okay? I've said it from the beginning. I don't know if anybody else, cares to hear this, but there are distinct differences amongst the changes. Whenever we do the walker ceremonies, we offer flesh, we offer our souls up, our basic bodies up to be transformed, to be possessed. And that's almost the same thing as being cursed, but we're asking to be cursed ourselves after we make a sacrifice. Is there a shape-shifting being out there that can transform at will to a dog man or a Bigfoot or even a lizard man. Honestly, I could probably say one of my theories is, yes, there is, living right next to humanity every day of our lives. We come across possibly people that could be alien species, whether they're a species never discovered before, living amongst us. Some of them call them immortals. I've done a whole couple podcasts on the whole immortals thing. Some of them call them gods, demigods, and that they have, it's like the tale of Zeus changing into a beautiful swan to seduce, a human woman. It's been talked about throughout creation. The whole history, of humanity is based off of things being able to transform into other forms. So I would say, yeah, there probably is some type of an entity out there, or a being, whether it's alien or terrestrial, it doesn't matter. But I do believe that there is some kind of being out there that can physically change into whatever it wants to soothe its needs or function for whatever task it's doing. And that's just a theory. So
Anybody else got a comment on that? Yeah, for me, as far as transforming into Sasquatch, I don't know. Do I know black magic is used to transform into a werewolf type being? Yes. As far as Sasquatch, I've never heard of anything. I don't know. When it comes to the dark magic side of it with my family, it's different.
Has anybody on the panel here ever had somebody tell them that 1 minute Bigfoot was in front of them and the next thing they saw a fox or a coyote or a deer or an elk or a stump? How about a tree stump?
A squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
A squirrel.
Yeah.
Actually, at that state park that I did an investigation at here in Georgia, near where the Georgia Guidestones used to be, one of the reports was that two couples were walking to their tent site. They were campers and they were walking there late at night down a trail, and a hulking, like 7 to 8 foot tall Bigfoot jumped out of the tree in front of the first two people that were walking, and then they took off running backwards. And they passed the people behind them. The people behind them saw a squirrel in the middle of the night. So that was just very odd. But the two people in the front swore they saw a Bigfoot.
Yeah. And I believe that.
I've actually had something weird happen to me. If you guys recall the night, I think I told DA about this. Is like I was hearing some sort of chatter down in my bottoms, and when I pulled out my my mic to record it, the rain was drowning it out, so I couldn't get it on I can't speak English, so we're doing redneck. The enhanced mic. That's all, folks. So the next day I went down, in which I've got this recording in my YouTube. So the next day I went down to the area where I was hearing the voices come from, and I found some interesting stuff there. Well, I heard something kind of heavy run, and when I looked up, I actually seen a fox, and that thing disappeared behind a 4-inch tree. And I was like, okay, that's odd. That's really odd. I mean, for me, it looked like 4 inches. I didn't go up. I mean, for me, it looked like it was this big. I was roughly 40 yards from it, so it's probably more like that. But it disappeared behind this tree. It was weird. That was something that was weird. And I think I even mentioned it on the video. It's in that deal. I think I even said, "Wow, there was a fox, and that thing just disappeared." That was the craziest thing I ever seen when I was out checking stuff out.
Yeah. I was just laughing at Christopher's comment in there. It was kind of a question too, but he didn't put it in caps. He was asking, why doesn't any investigators like us, boots on the ground, when we do boots on the ground, why don't we dress up as a cryptid? I don't think he's ever traversed the woods at night without, having a flashlight on and all that.
Shot.
You're
Exactly.
going to get shocked, or you're going to have a honeymoon moment that you don't remember. You don't want to remember. I mean, that's another thing too. You might tie something and go giggity goo. All right.
Ever seen the movie
You're going to have a
48
bad
hours,
night.
not 48 hours, Trading Places, where they
Oh.
trapped that guy in the gorilla costume and stuck him in the cage with another gorilla? Yeah.
Well,
Whoa.
Suddenly,
David actually has
a music.
yeah. Definitely a time you don't want to hear
Got a
bomb.
pretty mouth, boy.
I'm going to come around here and do some weird stuff with you. David's got a question for you, for everybody. Do any of you, and this actually, Jessica has talked about this, or we've all actually kind of talked about this one a little bit. Do any of you have knowledge of the U.S. government having a treaty or using Dogman or Sasquatch for their own uses, or is this for a complete show itself? Kind of both. I mean, it's a complete show, but we all have covered this before.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, well, it just kind of it really it depends. I believe so. Okay, I got asked this quite a bit over the weekend too, because believe it or not, a lot of the Bigfooter people are super into Dogman as well, of course. And so we got I got into some interesting conversations recently, like over the whole weekend up in Tennessee. And I do, I've been told that there are like Dogman breeding programs and stuff. I mean, anything can be weaponized, right? Like if there are Dogmen and Bigfoots, we know they are. Why wouldn't they be weaponized? Okay, so why wouldn't there be some sort of program where they're being used in wartime and just for assassinations and kidnappings? And I mean, some of the missing 411 people possibly could be taken by some of them. Who knows? I mean, there's no telling, but I do think as far as a treaty goes, I don't know. I've heard there is. I heard there's been treaties.
I can personally tell everybody in the chat that, you can't trust the government with treaties. You could ask this Indian, okay? Because treaties only get you stuck on a little parcel of land and you're given rations and stuff and basically not allowed to do your own spiritual ceremonies. So,
Same can tell you when the government tells you don't need a gun, you need a gun.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, DA. Exactly.
Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah. The words you don't want to hear.
I mean, I've heard several stories of it. I mean, the reason why I wrote the Vangerian Guard Book 1, House of Battle, was based off of World War II Allied encounters of German werewolves transforming and attacking Allied soldiers. So, I mean, if these encounters are true, then that there shows you even back in that time they were doing this type of stuff. Can I say they're doing it now? No. If they were doing it then, I can pretty much guarantee you they probably are now. That's about it for me.
Well, I mean, from being in the military, you hear rumors and stuff, and you see some things, especially when you're above top secret. I mean, they've always had a super soldier program. And we've always been in the we have always been in the contest against Russia for this super soldier thing is beyond me, because if you recall back in, right after the Korean War, Russia was actually trying to mix the DNA of human and ape and to create a super soldier. And, we unfortunately, America's got to somehow try to outdo Russia all the time. So, yeah, I wouldn't put it past our government and the special access programs that I'm not going to talk about doing this on the side. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, I can see it happening.
Anybody else want to comment on that one? No. Well, we got another one here. This is actually a pretty good one here. This is from Rodney. Do any of you think we may be able to communicate with Bigfoot with a pleasant outcome? I can just tell you from what I know from research on Native American stuff, they not only traded with Bigfoot, they warred with them and lived alongside them. communication I've heard several times is possible. Even with sign language, they would do know a type of sign language. I can't tell you for sure. That's just what I've read in reports, and that's about as far as I can get on that one because that's about all I know.
Yep. I tend to agree with you there. And this comes from firsthand experience too, because picking wild grapes and berries next to them, and they've stood 10, 15 feet away from me, basically stinking me out. I've never, every encounter I've had, except for that second time when I was 12 years old, has been more of a surreal encounter. It was more of of just an acknowledgement and a respectful way towards each other. You respect them, give them their distance and their opportunities to do what they want to do, and they respect us and give us our opportunities to do what we want to do. As far as the sign language thing goes, yeah, I mean, the main sign language would be, if we were telling them that we were their friend, we would go, and then out that way. But you'd always touch your heart and point to them. And this was the sign of enemy, doing this across the back of your hand. And yes, we did a little bit of sign language in today. But in the old days, yeah, they used to trade with them and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there was gifting areas and all that we never really talked about growing up. But then again, that's just my own encounters. I've never encountered them while I was hunting, because I was always taught that when you go to the forest or the mountains to do your hunting, to take your shoes and your socks off and to just kind of get a feel for it with your feet in the ground, and just embrace the ground beneath your feet. Maka Wakan, sacred Mother Earth. Because she's everything. Everything comes from Mother Earth. And a lot of their spiritual medicine comes from Mother Earth. Over the legends and the tales that you hear from Native American lore. So if we make that good connection, spiritually, and basically put out there the thought that we're coming into your house, and we mean no ill harm. We won't leave any trash behind, or we respect you if you respect us. Just have that kind of a mentality going into it. You're only going to have good things come out of it. So, and it won't just affect you with the cryptids, it'll affect you with the wildlife and how you interact with the wildlife in that environmental area. Okay. So it goes full circle.
Yeah. Anybody else? I'm trying to get caught up on comments, so I'm trying to get down to the next question. But any else got a comment on what you think? Could we actually communicate with them? I know you wrote it in your books, DA. Which that when you wrote that in the Wild Hunt Odin's Call, that added a lot of life to it. It was very interesting.
I think it's possible, but I also think it depends on the individual. I mean,
right.
Like, for example, a great one I like to point out is that guy that billed himself as the Grizzly Man. He believed he could communicate with those bears, and he knew them very well. And he took his girlfriend up to camp out among the bears, and he got eaten. Him and his girlfriend. And I've used the example of me hiking up in the Rockies and rounding a corner and coming nose to nose with a grizzly bear. I mean, I was close enough I could have went and touched it on the nose, but it looked at me and was like, oh shit, a human. And I definitely looked at it like, oh shit, a bear. And we went our opposite directions. Now, had that been
brown moment.
Yeah, it was definitely a brown pants moment. Had it been one of those times of the year when it was hungry or getting ready to go into hibernation or it had cubs, different story. Just because you get one good outcome doesn't mean the next one's not going to be hostile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
To quote unquote gifting, I think leaving food out for anything is a stupid idea, because once it associates you with food, the one time you don't bring food, you're in trouble.
Yeah, just ask all those people in the third world countries
Mhm.
who get pulled off the banks of rivers by crocodiles where they clean their fish and everything because the crocs end up associating them with food.
All right. And to be honest with you too, whenever we gifted them, it was feathers and stuff like that, or something intricate that they would give us would be like grapevines interwoven into some shape. So, it
Mhm.
was something that we never gifted them food. So
Yeah. Well, we got about 9 minutes left, so we can go ahead and start winding some things down here. Because I know for me, I've got to be up at 0530 or 0500 in the morning and out the door by 06. So I got a work day ahead of me. I ain't retired yet. Daggone it. But I want to thank every single one of you guys coming on. This was a true blessing and an honor, and I thank you so much. I had a lot of fun doing this. The chat really seems to like this. Everybody, Roxanne, thanks Roxanne for being my mod. She is truly stellar, and I've been having her post the stuff at night that I usually put up on the screen just because we got so much going on. I didn't want to lose that. That's okay, Freaky. You can always come. I mean, this is going to be saved on her, so it'll come back and be available for you to watch again later, though. I mean, this is awesome. Do you guys got any closing comments that you want before we start winding it the rest of the way down?
Don't everybody speak at once.
Yeah.
Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this video and channel. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe to William over here, to Jessica over there, to Robbie's channel up there. He's got a channel called What's Really Out There. You've got William, what's your show called?
Okay, good.
Nighthawk Eye Strangers podcast channel.
Jessica's the Cryptid Huntress. And our channel is called DAX Machina. And just show a little love. Give us all a little like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, I tell you guys this every week. These guys here are some of the best people you can know out there. And as you've heard tonight, we don't all have the same opinion on certain things. And this is what makes this great, because now you get to see, and I've said this many times on William's show and my show, Native Americans, when they came across something to discuss, they sat in a circle around this thing and they talked about it. Then they would take a break, get up, and rechange where they sat and look upon it on another view. And this is kind of what this is doing here. And this is what I love about this, because none of us are experts on this show. I will never claim to be an expert. I can tell you what my experiences and my research has been. That's the only thing I can point at. And mine is changing every single day. It's like I always say, do not take what I say with a grain for granted. Take it with a grain of salt. Do your own research, build upon that, or come up with your own opinion and your hypothesis. In order for us to figure this out, even though we have differences, we got to come together and talk about this. And this is what's great about this show.
And
really,
basically, don't believe everything you see. Do your own research and your own investigations too. Get out there and at least experience the way it is out there. Then you'll see how difficult it is to basically theorize things, just like the rest of us are having trouble doing it. Because and like Eric just said, just don't believe everything that you see, okay? Because we got a problem with AI nowadays, and we got a problem with CGI and all that, and actual movie clips being shared as legitimate, and it's very, very disheartening to see that happen to a community that's trying to evolve and trying to work together. So just basically help one another out.
And to echo off what William said, there's even past the AI and the CGI and all that stuff, there's still plenty of people out there who just want to fake stuff for their 15 minutes of fame. DA and I looked at a video a couple months ago, and then I had somebody send it back to me. Video from, I believe it was somewhere in Australia, where the hogs were killed, and then there was a trackway that was walking up through there, and they were just, but everything was so clean. There was no blood. The tracks were just like perfect in the sand. So the guy sent it to me. He says, "Well,
That
what
was
do you think?" And
staged.
I said it was staged. It was fake. And he said, "Well, how do you know?" I said, "Well, look at the lines of the footprint. They're perfect. I mean, you don't see that in nature." William will tell you that, he is probably a better tracker than I am. You don't see those perfect straight lines in nature. But people are out there just either to get their 15 minutes of fame or to make us look stupid. Whatever the reasoning, that's what they're doing. So you have to watch out for stuff like that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I have wrote a poem. I've never changed it, even though I said I was going to several times. And I love to read this at the end of my Sunday shows. And it goes, there comes a time when the warrior falls. They leave this realm and will be missed by all. Raise a glass and keep them in your heart. They have kept this realm safe and performed their part. Look to your veterans, your active duty, your EMTs, and the blue line. What they have done was walk that fine line. When the demon comes calling on your soul, they will be there to save us all. Hold them in your prayers, for they are deserving. They all have served or are serving. Everybody, thank you so much once again. I think we had a great time. I'm sorry I could not get to everybody's questions. We'll try to do something again and get to some more. So with that being said, until next time, y'all, peace, love, and blessings to every single one of y'all.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, y'all.